All right, guys, doing really well so far. You guys are hanging in there and doing an amazing job, and I'm super thrilled that you all are still with me here. We're gonna go ahead and look at the next section in our coding curriculum, which is going to be the idea of using looping. Later, I'll talk about this principle known as the dry principle, and we'll probably cover a whole video on what it means to have dry programming. But the idea of the dry principle is that you don't repeat yourself, and we'll talk about why that is. But loops, specifically the ones we'll target today, are going to be a for loop and a while loop, are some of the greatest ways to make sure that you don't run into the hazards caused by the dry principle. So let's go ahead and look at what a loop is and why it's very effective. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a sample script here. By the way, if you haven't already, please go check out the scripting basics tutorial that I talked about, as well as the Roblox basics, and also check out maybe some of the conditional statement stuff as well. I'll probably use some of that stuff in here, but as I said, let's go ahead and talk about looping. So there are two main types of loops, and essentially what a loop is a loop is a way to repeat code, right? So let's say I want to print something, right? Let's say I want to print I'm awesome, right? But let's say I want to do this 10 times. Now, I could take this and I could copy and paste it 10 times, right? But we'll talk about why that's not necessarily a good idea later when we talk about the dry principle, right? A more effective way to do it, and to be honest, even a more time-efficient way, would be to use looping. So, the two main types of loops that we'll look at are a for loop and a while loop. So, a for loop will do something for a specific amount of times. So this is for a specific amount of times is when a for loop is executed. So if I wanted to print this 10 times, for example, I would go for, a variable here. I could assign this variable as C. I could also assign this as count. I could assign whatever I want. I will set that equal to 1 at the start of the program and go to 10. I will do a specific action. Print I'm awesome. And then I will go ahead and end the program here. And this will print I'm awesome 10 times. As you can see here, I have that time 10 to indicate that it was printed 10 times, right? So a for loop will indicate to do something for a specific amount of times. A while loop will do something based off of a condition. So it will do something until a specific condition is met. And you can even use the break to have a while loop break if you need to. So a while loop is conditional. So let's look at this. For example, let's say I have a variable here of C is equal to 0. And I say while C, and then I write the condition here. C is less than 10, do, right? I'll put a wait here, and then I'll do print I'm great. And then I'll set C equal or assigned to C plus 1, right? And just like before, this will go ahead and loop through here and print I'm great 10 times, and you can clearly see that here in my output window. So a while loop does something based on a condition, and those are the two main loops oftentimes used inside of Roblox Studio. And the benefit is that you don't have to take I'm great here and copy and paste it like this. This not only is ineffective in the programming world, but also will run into errors later when we talk about the dry principle, which we'll talk about a ton. But let's go ahead and look at the examples here. I use two different types of loops to essentially print the same program. And, if you were me, you'd probably be asking yourself, all right, that's really cool, but when would I do one and when would I not do the other? So while loops are typically done, again, based on a condition. So a for loop would do something for a specific amount of times. But let's say this wasn't that, for example. Let's say this was player health, right? And when the player's health was less than 10, let's say the player's health is normally 70, right? If the player's health was less than 10, I would do something. So this would never run until the player's health was less than 10, right? Or let's say it was 5 here. And then let's say this was a game event that had, the health increase by 1. This would be a good example of when to use a while loop, right? Is, again, when something is flexible and it changes, and then this is no longer met. Now, in a while loop, you can also use break, which will instantly just break you out of the while loop. And typically, this is ran with an if-then statement. If h, or health, is equal to 7, then break. Right, and then, this would be the game event, health is equal to health now plus 1, and this will break. As you can see, it ran for 5, added 1, ran for 6, added 1, ran for 7, and then broke right here, printing I am great 3 times. So while loops are typically done based off a condition, where if I just wanted to, for example, make 10 parts after runtime, let's say I wanted to wait 3 seconds and then make 10 parts, right? This will create 10 new parts in the workspace. And I come over here. Here we go. I think they're falling. Whoops, what happened? Oh. You don't have to worry about that. That's okay. We'll just do P. We'll do part.name as P. Yeah, we'll just do that. My bad. Cool. All right, so I come over here. Here are my 10 parts, right? So if I wanted to do something for a specific amount of times, right, doing it this way with a for loop is the more effective way of doing things, right? Where while loop, again, is based off of a condition. Now, before we finish this video out, I want to talk about while loops for a second. Whenever you have a while loop, you must always have a wait function in there, because if you don't have a wait function inside of your while loop, the game will crash. If this does not exist, the game will crash. And it's super important that you have a wait function here so the game doesn't crash. And while loops are very useful as well, because essentially you can alternate lines of code for essentially while the game is running by using a true statement here. Since true is never false, you will always have true here, right? And then you can always, wait, and then if, a certain event happens, right? Events, then break, right? You can always trigger something that happened here, or if a certain value here, whatever happens, is now true, then you can break the code. Right, and this is a nice little idea to keep in mind here, is that concept that you can essentially implement an if-then statement inside of a while loop to break the code or to break the loop from cycling. And that's what makes while loops very effective, is they're conditional, while for loops do things for a specific amount of times. So that's a nice little video on looping. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please always feel free to ask us. But this is another Roblox fundamental concept that we will be using a ton. So make sure you know it. And I'll see you in the next one.